welcome to spring of 22. Can you believe it?
About time.
I know, but, I got, on my Facebook page, I got a little notice of, the past things come up. Yesterday, 4 years ago, we had a snowstorm that piled on in the backyard. I'm going, well, I guess I'm ready for spring. I don't know about you. So I want to get started right away, and I want to remind everybody that I have a hook. So we have some people who like to talk a lot. So here, you guys, here's my hook. If they talk too long, I'm gonna grab them. The same rule as when you do your promo videos, 2 to 3 minutes of good chit chat, kind of a description of what your course is going to be about. Now, I have not put these courses in order of the brochure. I have put them in kind of an order of a combination, or pretty much what their subject matter is. So I'm going to start here with, I think, let's see here. Page down. This doesn't seem to like me. Just 1 second, while I get this going. Technology sucks. So says the person who's handling all the technology. It says Zoom rooms and reclaiming must make disrupt. Okay, I don't care. Yeah. Let's see about that. Okay, you're seeing everything right now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into slideshow from the beginning. And okay, now we're good. So first person who is Forrest is not here. He'll be joining us a little bit later. But Forrest, if you're here, yell at me, but I don't see you on there. So I'm going to just go ahead and play his video for you.
Ever since its beginning some years ago, the Chesapeake Forum course on memoir writing, which I have renamed Writing Reminiscences, has been held in person. This was true even during the long months of the COVID-19 pandemic. By its very nature of having a kind of intimacy and an ongoing interchange of comments, it was hard to imagine doing it any other way. Attendees agreed that the recently provided Bullet House meeting room contributed to the warmly supportive face-to-face spirit. But in response to some requests from people who could not easily attend in person, the forum's spring offering of Writing Reminiscences will be done in a Zoom format. And I hope that enrollment preference will be given to those most in need of taking advantage of this format. And please so indicate when you sign up for the course. This will be done as an experiment. We'll see just how much of the elements of intimacy and abundant verbal exchanges can be maintained in the 3 meetings in this format. One main difference will be that because of time constraints, participants will have to circulate their 1 or 2 page writings at least a day in advance. We'll continue to ask that then colleagues first read their piece, and then after that, others will come in with comments with praise and suggested improvements. As in the past, the design will continue to require a limited enrollment of 7. And if the past is a guide, those of you who participate will find this a rewarding experience. In some cases, finally getting yourself to fulfill that promise that you long ago gave to yourself to write about your memories or your concerns or your hopes and dreams for the future, or your drafts of poems or songs, indeed, whatever you want to express in words. I look forward to helping you on those projects.
So just so you know, what I've done is I've cut the enrollment to 4, and then the additional people will come in, sort of like what happened for coming in here. If you went past 30, then you went into a wait list. And then on the wait list people, I'll be able to contact them and double check. Because there is really no way in our registration system to have somebody say that, well, I can't get out of the house and I really need to be able to do this. But we were alerted last time that there were a number of people who had mentioned. So the next class, this is, if you took the Smithsonian class a year ago, you'll remember this class. It's free and it's run by our docent, Yuan,
Beautiful, look at it.
who has experience with us and does a great job. So this is a little bit about her program.
Welcome to springtime. Welcome to the online tour of Cherry Blossom. My name is Yuan. I was trained as a neuroscientist and worked at the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, for many years. You may ask, what does that have something to do with the cherry blossom? Yes, a lot. Because I lived in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area for over 30 years. And one of my hobbies is photography. So I went to the tidal basin and the National Mall, taking pictures of the cherry blossom. Over the years, I learned a lot about them. I also learned something about the history of the National Cherry Blossom Festival. More importantly, I became a volunteer docent at the National Museum of Asian Art.
What you doing, you silly kitty?
Our museum has
doing?
one of the best collections of Asian art, including Chinese, Japanese, Indian, and many others. Among those Chinese and Japanese paintings, we have quite a few depict the beautiful flowering trees, which is the center focus of Hanami. Hanami is a Japanese word for cherry blossoms. Literally, it means flower viewing. So if you have cherry trees in your backyard or in your neighborhood, or if you have lived in the DC area or came to the DC area during springtime, or you love Asian art and culture and history, I hope this tour will make you enjoy. During the tour, I will first share with you the history of Hanami, especially how was it developed in Japan. Then we will spend a little time talking about the history of the cherry blossom in the Washington area. Moreover, I will share the fabulous collections of our museum, and let's all look through the eyes of the Asian artists to see how beautiful those blooming trees. Finally, you might pick a few tips on when and where to watch what kind of cherry blossom in our national capital. I look forward to meeting you online on April 12th at 2 o'clock. See you then.
You might, if you remember, Yuan, she has been leading tours for the Smithsonian since 2020. She's led 75 online museum tours and 50 cultural-related webinars, serving thousands of listeners. She is the docent trainer. So we had originally been told that we were going to have a different person who actually lives here in Talbot County and has taken, actually took a class from you one time, but she got cold feet and Yuan told her she would take over for her. So we're looking forward to her. She was sort of, she acted a little hesitant with this video, but she's a very engaging person. Now, let's see. Do I have Michelle? Are you there? Can you unmute yourself and show your picture? There she goes. So tell us a little bit about your class. Michelle is a first-time course leader here for Chesapeake Forum, and she's a fabulous photographer, and I've gotten to know her as a fellow Californian. She not only takes pictures, but she describes to people what was going on when she took the pictures. She's also a wildlife rescue person, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. So Michelle, I'm only giving you 3 to 5 minutes here.
3 to 5 minutes. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Dodge, and I'll be presenting a Walk on the Wild Side, a photo tour of the Great Pacific Flyway. And this course is really an intimate photographic tour of bird life in the Sacramento Valley. So it's not a photography course. It's not a birding course. It's more of a inside view into the lives of some of the birds that I run into in the area. I live in the Sacramento Valley, and we happen to sit right under the Great Pacific Flyway in Northern California. And as Lynn had mentioned, I'm a wildlife photographer and a wildlife rescuer. So I get really up close and personal with a lot of these birds and other wildlife, but we're focused on birds here. And it's both migrating birds. So the Great Pacific Flyway is really migration, but we also have a really broad biodiversity of resident birds. So we're going to be looking at a little bit of both. And I'm just going to show you a few photos as I'm talking of the areas that I visit quite often. I live near the American River, and this is a view of the American River in the rain, and another view of it. And I walk it almost every day. And I'm out looking at the birds, observing the birds, taking photos of the birds, and also kind of looking at what humans are doing to the birds. So I'm looking for animals that have been injured, that need help. I look for things that can cause injury. And I also get called oftentimes to work with injured animals. So the course is really going to be just a up close and personal in some of these birds' lives, some of the stories as I go through observing the birds. And we won't just be looking at the river. I also go out into the Sacramento Valley. And so it's just a beautiful area, especially in the winter. This is actually snow geese migrating over. And more snow geese.
What's her name?
Sacramento Valley.
Yeah, American River is still right next to it.
Yeah, the American River and then the Sacramento Valley. And so it's kind of a wide area.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I accidentally muted you, Michelle. Come unmute yourself. Somebody was, I was trying to find who was needing to be muted.
And so it's going to be just some of these pictures are a lot of birds, a lot of close up and personal. So this is just kind of giving you an idea of the kind of areas that I am going into to find these birds. Farm fields. We have a ton of farm fields in Sacramento Valley, and they flood them in the winter. So they become this incredible habitat because it's full of food. And so these are tundra swans that have come all the way down from as far as the Russian tundra for winter. And then, of course, we will have some rescue stories. So this is just me with a hawk that was injured that I went out and rescued. And so it's kind of a look at the wildlife, the birds in the area, what goes on in their daily lives, some of the stories as I observe what's going on. And just join me for the beauty of these wonderful animals. And we'll tour the American River, we'll tour parts of the Sacramento Valley, and just take a look at what's out there. So I look forward to seeing people at the end of April.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if you can unshare, and hopefully my share will show up. There we go. Let's see. Let me go back to sharing content. Okay, everyone, can you see that? So, Don, can you see the screen? Can somebody give me, Claudia, can you see the screen? Good, okay. I found that it's always a good idea to double check. So the next person up following this is Wayne, our resident birder. And just talk right towards them.
It's the resident, not present.
Just talk towards
Talk to
them.
there. Okay, everybody see what's going on there? Hi, I'm Wayne Bell, and I'm with the Talbot County Bird Club, among other things. And I'm doing this course on birds and birding on the Eastern Shore. I went back over the history. It's our 6th year doing this under Chesapeake Forum.
Wow.
And wow, it
Yeah.
goes back to just about the beginning.
Huh.
And we just talked about the Pacific Flyway. Here we are on the Atlantic Flyway. This course is part 2 of a 2-part course. The first 2 occurred during the winter semester. And those were called Wondrous Waterfowl, in which we looked at the the wintering duck populations in the Chesapeake region. And then we went to coastal specialties, coastal treasures on the Atlantic coast in Ocean City, Berlin, and a few other environs to our east. Here in the spring semester, we're going to do 2 more, special birds in special places. The first is called Burst of Spring, and it deals really with the early arrival of spring migrants. The class occurs in April, and it's followed about 5 days later by an all-day field trip to parts of Wacomico County and Dorchester County for early spring migrant short songbirds. And then in May, we do fantastic shorebirds. I think it's actually called Amazing Shorebirds, and we'll look at the shorebird migration that occurs in the Delaware Bay area. So we'll be going over to Bombay Brook National Wildlife Refuge. And with a little luck, we may see the phenomenon of the red knots feeding on the fishy crab eggs. So that should be really special if that happens. But in reviewing this, it's not just a field course on bird identification, which is how it started. But in fact, I see the theme coming up this spring in particular has to do with bird migration in general. So I'm doing a little bit of background work, and each class will talk a bit about why birds migrate, how birds migrate, and with the latest in being able to track bird migration, even to birds as small as songbirds, some interesting insights that are really just happening in terms of how that migration occurs, the food sources, the kinds of habitat the birds need, and the importance of stopover points. And in the Amazing Shorebirds, we're going to be looking at species that may overwinter as far south as Tierra del Fuego and are on their way to the Arctic. Journeys of 4,000 to 6,000 miles. In some cases, the birds don't even land until they come to the refueling places like Delaware Bay. So in addition to a little bit of interesting background, we hope to see some of these fantastic species live and in the flesh. Come along, you don't have to be a seasoned bird to do this. We'll have a couple of folks on board, I'm sure, who know their birds, but this course is open to beginners, and we just love to have it because it's really special to be out there with you all. Thank you.
And I should attest that I've taken many of your classes, Wayne, and I always learn something. And when I track the feedback from classes, everybody talks about how wonderful the field trips are, that they learn so much in those field trips. And I will never forget watching Wayne come back from a trip out to Pickering Creek, all giddy because he was taking note of how many species he'd seen that morning. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so Wayne Bell. Anyway, so thank you very much, Wayne, and for supporting Chesapeake Forum with courses.
See.
Now, let's see, we've got somebody that needs to be muted. And somebody else. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I am then the next person up, and I can guarantee you I won't talk for 5 minutes. So I'm coming back this year for another class on the importance of native plants in your garden. Now, I'm not just talking about going, in fact, I'm emphatically not suggesting that you tear out your garden and put native plants in. What I am suggesting is that we really look carefully at how we are impacting our ecology by not planting native plants and instead planting plants from, the big box stores that come from China or India or what have you, that serve no fundamental purpose to the birds and the insects that the birds need. Now, somehow lately I've had a number of people say that I do a lot of arm twisting, but I don't think I had to twist Wayne's arm that hard to get him to collaborate with me. Oh, Wayne, come on, to collaborate with me on this course. Now, Wayne will be helping on, he can't come to session 1, but he's coming on session 2 and session 3. And in those 2 sessions, we will be focusing first on the impact that we have had as we've been so busy planting houses instead of keeping fields and woodlands and native plants, anything native for the birds. Wayne mentioned in his last course a study he just recently seen where that was attributing the downfall of a bird species because they weren't getting the food they needed in this habitat. So he'll be talking a lot about that. I've done a lot of research on that as well. And then the last session, with Wayne, we're going to look at our homes like a clean slate. And we're going to first think about, what birds would I like to see in my yard? And then we're going to think about, well, what does that particular bird need in order to function, to eat? What does it want? What's it looking for? And what provides that? It might be an oak tree, which I'm sure many of you know that the oaks provide a multitude of insects and everything that birds need, or it might be a specific plant. So we'll be looking at that. In the very first session, I will be talking more along the lines of what are some of the problems you have in your yard? Like many of us have areas in our yard that get swampy, or maybe they get too dry, and what native plants you could try using in those areas that would acclimatize to that and would do very well. And I will also be talking about how to plan your garden so that you have a succession of blooms throughout the 3 seasons so that you can see some of those pollinators and some of the larvae, some of the bugs and some of, all of the things that those birds will be looking for. So look for the importance of native plants in your garden again this year. We had a lot of fun last year. I have still not completely decided on the field trips, but the classes are on Tuesdays, if I'm correct, and field trips are on Fridays, so that we'll have a chance to get out and see things up close and personal. So next in our lineup is the life cycle of the honeybee and becoming a beekeeper. Lisa Hamlin, are you here by chance? I don't see her, so I'm going to go ahead and run her video.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hamlin, and I've been beekeeping for over 20 years. I was taught and mentored by my father. And on April 26th at about 4 p.m., weather permitting, I'm going to do an installation of a new hive in St. Nicholas off Gray Street in a private residence. And during our class, we're going to have a live discussion about a variety of bee things, and then we'll actually demonstrate putting a new hive in its new hive body. So we'll be talking about the bee life cycle, which I find really fascinating. I'm really excited to talk about that. I've done many talks on this before, trying to get really encouraging people not to use pesticides or insecticides in their yard. But we'll be talking about, in particular, the life cycle of the bee. We'll be talking about beekeeping equipment. For example, what is this? How do the bees use it in a beekeeper's hive? Again, we'll be installing a new hive, so you'll be able to see the queen in her cage along with her attendants, and then about 10,000 other bees come shipped with her. And finally, we'll be talking about the importance of honeybees, how they're pollinators, along with all of our the pollinators that live here, because honeybees are not native to the United States. We bring them in, so they have they really do they really are threatened by many pests, along with what pesticides and insecticides can do. So please join me in this live demonstration on April 22nd. And again, that will be weather dependent because we'll be outside actually installing the bees. And April 22nd is Earth Day. Thank you so much.
Lisa is a new instructor, and you'll notice we have a lot of new instructors or course leaders this semester, and I'm just tickled by that. It's so nice to get some new faces and new air in your, Jody?
Yeah. Installation is gonna be in my yard.
Oh. I'm gonna take advantage.
I know where to go. The bees are gonna come to my yard.
So speaking of bees and butterflies, Mary Ellen Gillen from Pickering Creek will be leading a trip around Pickering Creek looking at the butterflies. It's the last class in this semester. It will be in June. Let me go ahead and play this for you.
Hi, my name is Mary Helen Gillen. I'm the Director of Education at Pickering Creek Audubon Center. Join me at Pickering Creek on Thursday, June 23rd for In Search of Butterflies. We'll spend the morning walking the meadow, wetland, and garden trails, looking for a variety of butterflies, from the very dainty eastern-tailed blues to the attention-grabbing black swallowtails. This will give you a chance to see our new meadow trail and enjoy native flowers that will be blooming. It will also be a chance to practice your butterfly identification skills and to learn about the relationships between butterflies and their native plant hosts. We'll also enjoy a warm walk on a beautiful day. I can't wait to see you in the field.
Many of you know Mary Helen as Wayne's sidekick during a number of his birding classes. And we've been very fond of her and the relationship that we have with Pickering Creek. This next one is with Doug Levin. I do not see him, so we'll go ahead and click on his. He's doing Ruining Your Day at the Beach.
Hey, good morning. My name's Doug Levin. I'm Doug the geologist, and I'm here to talk to you about actually ruining your day at the beach. That's what my students call it. It's the kind of program where if the beach is the kind of place where you prefer to lay down, read, vegetate, this might not be the program for you. I'll ask questions. We'll explore. What part of the wave causes the beach to erode? Yeah, there are parts to a wave. There are also parts to the beach. Why do you swim parallel to the beach to get out of a rip current? What is undertow? Or is it undertow, or is it to tow you out to sea? When you run out into the water, why does it sometimes get shallower? And why are sands on the beach different colors? Look at this. Here's black sands, right? You step on this, you're going to get glass in your foot. Here are sands, same color, 7,000 miles apart. How come they're both red? And here, these are sugar sands. I'll tell you why we call them sugar sands. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. These sands are all shell, all critter stuff. And this is gravel from a beach in the Azores. Now, this is gravel. It's rounded and it's spherical. What's the difference between round and spherical? I'll let you know. So in this program, we'll learn about why beaches erode, and we'll examine beach sands from all over the world. And you can bring your sands in, and I'll show you how to examine them and figure out why it's what it is. So that's it. Come see what beaches are like and come examine sand. It's a lot more fun than it sounds. See ya.
If any of you who've never taken a class from Doug, he has a great sense of humor. And he has a fun teaching style. I call Linda Miss Manners. Linda is going to be teaching a class. How perfect is this? Manners, respect, and civility in a post-pandemic society. So come on, thank you. Just look right into the camera. A 17-year-old girl wrote in her high school yearbook, "It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice." It's not easy all the time to be nice, is it? One of you said to me, and I want to sit in the front row. When you think about it, it takes lifelong learning. And that's why perhaps I chose the topic, manners, respect, and civility. I was that 17-year-old girl, and I'm continuing to learn about this. How many of you here would like to see better manners around the dinner table and in society? Raise your hand, please. Dinner table and society. How many would like to see more respect given to others in our population? Thank you. How many would like to learn more about civility? And it was created by the ancient Romans in 540 BC. And can it be achieved? Neighbor to neighbor relations here, right here in our area or in our towns and in our country. How many would like to, if you'd like to see more about civility, applaud for me. Because during the pandemic, it was easy to forget our social skills. My name is Linda Evans, and I'm a native of Talbot County. That was my yearbook. It was Easton High School. I won't tell you what year. At age 17, I moved to Washington, D.C. to study and to work. Early in my career, I had the opportunity to work for the American Management Association, and I later transitioned to my own company called the Conference Table Seminars. I design and present seminars for personal development and business profitability. I believe that there's a crisis in American values and how we treat one another that can be improved through communications and training. I don't have a pill in the palm of my hand to solve all of our world's problems. I wish I did. But we have a problem-solving ability, and we will be using that. A lot of times when they hear manners, respect, and civility, it brings a lot of passion. People tell me about their good experiences, but also their bad experiences. And each one of them wanted mentioned here in this seminar. But we will be mentioning a lot of them. It will be a very interactive seminar. In fact, just today, right before this class, I met Charlie Dunkard, and he gave me a fabulous definition of manners and civilization. So I'm hoping that he will attend our class and talk with us a little bit more about that. We'll be discussing the definition of civility and how can it be achieved in our society. So bring your definition of civility with you, please. How can we respect others and improve communication, even neighbor to neighbor? What are manners? Why are they important for our youth? Do you think that our youth needs manners today? And adults, how can change even happen? Can we affect change? And how can each of us, myself included, bring about positive change and outcomes? It's not going to be all serious. We're going to live, learn, and laugh. In our seminars, we laugh a lot. There's one little vignette that I'd like to mention, and that is the story that I just read about a lady who got off a train. And as the train doors closed, she realized that she only had one glove, her favorite glove. She left her other glove on the train. What was she to do? What would you do? Well, what she did is she threw the glove back onto the train. And why did she do that? I'm reading the answer. She shifted from thinking of herself to thinking of someone else, from regretting the loss of a glove to giving her pair to another traveler. Now, call out to me. Do you think this is manners, respect, or civility? Just call out what you
Hopefully.
I think it's actually all of those things. It's actually all, isn't it? So I think of the lady in the glove, and I met most of you beforehand. I look forward to seeing you at our program, Manners, Respect, and Civility. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Now, I think
Linda's course is going to be held over at Easton Club East in their, what do you call it, their community, yeah, over in the clubhouse. And this course is free. So I hope that a lot of people will come to it and learn, because as we start walking around more and seeing our friends and seeing people that we don't know, or seeing people that we'd rather avoid, this, I think, will really help us.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next one is with Naricia, and I don't believe she's here. Naricia is an accountant who is extremely busy right now. And I'm going to play, she's talking about financial concerns when you're 55 or older. We were looking for a class like this because a lot of us get to an age and we start worrying about the future. And of course, finances are a big part of that future, right? So Naricia will be talking about that. Let me play her video. We caught her in a car, by the way.
Hi, I'm Naricia Lowers, your instructor for financial considerations when you're 55 or better. I am so looking forward to meeting with you and going through some financial things to think about when you're approaching retirement. So we'll talk about things like Social Security and taxes, where we talk about how other income can affect your Social Security income tax. And then we'll talk about also maybe reverse mortgages and your retirement accounts. When can you start drawing from them? When must you draw from them? What are penalties? Those kinds of things. If you have other questions, financial wise, that you think you might want to talk about, let us know and we'll see what we can do. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and meeting with you in our class.
Now, I should say, Naricia really means it when she says, contact her ahead of time if you have questions. And I think that is wonderful because I'm sure that based on our own personal experiences and needs, we will all have lots of questions and she's the perfect person to ask. Now, the next person is a best-selling author, David O. Stewart. David, are you here on the Zoom? I don't see you. Now, I know that David had a conflict that he had to leave for, so he may have had to get off. But let me go ahead and play his video. David was one of our instructors last spring when we did a trial run of a spring class session. And he did a course on George Washington, on his book about George Washington that was really good. So this one is a little bit different. Let me have you listen to what he has to say about it.
Hi, I'm David O. Stewart, and I write historical narratives and historical novels. And I'd like to invite you to join me for a program titled From Family to Fiction, which comes out of my most recent book, The New Land, which is the first of a trilogy of historical novels based on my mother's family's history in this country. And it involves some challenges I hadn't dealt with before that were interesting. I've done the two follow-up books are queued up and will be coming out in the next year or so. But you have to explore a family story which may or may not be true. They're not always reliable. You need to figure out the resources to confirm or disprove what you can, knowing that you're probably not going to get it all nailed down, which is why we end up fictionalizing those stories. And then what's the process of fictionalization that is true to the characters and the situation and doesn't really do violence to people you may care about, or at least not wish to do violence to in their reputation? It's a fascinating process, and I'd like to share with you some of my experiences, hear some of yours, and see how we might be able to help each other. And I think it could be a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me.
Our next course leader is someone that we all know, Steve Goldman, the newspaper guy. And this time, Steve is talking about from a flight by balloon to Men on the Moon. Now, typical Steve fashion, that title was a lot longer than that, but we had to shorten it. So I can't say all the title in one breath. So here's Steve's video. See what I mean? That's a long one.
Hello, my name is Steve Goldman, and I would like to introduce you to a 3-session course that I will be offering, sponsored by the Chesapeake Forum in its spring semester. The title of the course is From a Flight by Balloon to Men on the Moon, a 4th-century history of aviation and space exploration as viewed through the lens of original historical newspapers. Now, I'd like you to picture a caveman some 100,000 years ago, give or take 90,000 years, sitting on a boulder at the front of his cave, looking up at the sky and seeing birds fly gracefully overhead, wishing that he could be up there with them. It would not be unreasonable to ponder that one day such a person would go to the edge of the cliff near his cave, jump confidently over the edge, and flap his arms rapidly as he had seen birds do many times over the years. This caveman, whose name has been lost to history, became the first test pilot and the first aviation fatality in unrecorded history. Now, fast forward many thousands of years, as the world at large views on a television screen the first men walking on the moon, or watches on their computer as a lunar rover gently lands on the planet Mars, sending back clear color videos of the red planet to the descendants of that early caveman on the planet Earth. The course I will be presenting will cover all of the time between our caveman's first trial flight up to the landing on the Mars rover, and will be divided into 3 sessions. Session 1 will cover the time period between the first unsuccessful attempts to fly through later successful flights by later-than-air balloons, and then up to the time shortly before the first successful heavier-than-air airplane flight by the Wright brothers. Session 2 will begin with the Wright brothers' first flights in 1903, move through improvements and milestones in aviation, and take the viewer up to today's era of the modern-day jet airplane. Session 3 will cover the development of rockets and space travel to examine how humans reach the surface of the moon and planets. All 3 sessions will use the magic carpet of original historical newspapers to show just how the development of flight took place and was reported in the press. So if you would like to see for yourself how we got from the caveman to Mars, please sign up for Steve Goldman's course, From a Flight by Balloon to Men on the Moon. I look forward to seeing you there.
Now, I see David Stewart up here now. David, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your class? I just showed your video from that you did for the website.
Yeah, there we are. Sorry, you just caught me. I had stepped away, and now I'm back. The program I was talking about is From Family to Fiction, and the notion is simply well, let me start from another angle. I think family stories are fascinating and are the most interesting, but they're sort of inherently unreliable. At least that's been my experience in my family. And as a researcher of histories, I'm always going to be skeptical of recollections. I led a program once, a writing workshop, which ended up with a bunch of memoir writers, and I was just stunned that these people could reproduce conversations that had happened 25 years in the past. And that's, you know, it's not actually memoir, that's fiction, was what it seemed to me. So when I was working with my family stories, my mother's family, I became persuaded that I could not am I on? I can't tell. I am. Okay. I'm just looking at someone who's talking. In any event, my I moved to writing it as fiction, as a novel, which felt much more comfortable and gave me a lot of freedom. I stuck to the basic outlines of the facts I knew and the ones I relied on and believed in. But even when you're writing real history, I recently did a book on George Washington. We do not know what George Washington did basically 98% of the time. And his life was incredibly well documented compared to most of us. And we certainly don't know what was going on inside his head, which is often the most interesting thing. So that's what I enjoyed writing about. When you do it based on family stories, there's always some hazards. Are you going to do it in a way that offends people you care about? Or are you going to do it in a way that is unfair to them? And so you have to be aware of that. And going back in time, as I did, you always have to worry about anachronisms, that we somehow transport our words, our understandings back to a different time. So I sort of imagine this program as an opportunity to get together with other people who want to write this sort of thing and maybe are torn between whether trying to do it as a memoir or doing it as a novel or doing it as a sort of narrative study, an attempt at writing real history, and share share experiences and ideas about how best to approach these stories and get them across. I will certainly share my own experiences. I've done this one book, which is based in the 18th century, based on my mother's ancestors, but I've also written two others, which will come out in the future, sequels, and have done a lot of research on other elements of the family. So this is, I don't know, it's a universal experience we all have, wondering where we came from, and the stories of other people are always interesting. So that's what I have in mind.
Thanks very much, David, for covering for me during this little glitch we had in our system. We've lost us. Technology is wonderful, but it does have some moments of anxiety. I'm probably all pink in the face.
Yes, well, I could see your mouth move, but I didn't hear anything.
Yes, well, that's because I'm silent on there, but just so that usually you get the sound from the Zoom room. So let's see here. I'm going to try and go back to sharing our meeting. And it does not seem to want to do that. So let me stop the current share.
So, and perhaps I should be clear also, my strong preference is to do this in person. I just think that's, assuming the health situation is good, and you guys seem to be okay with that as well. Yeah. I just think makes for a better exchange. We can get more comfortable with each other.
And I'm glad to confirm that with you, because we have you set up for hybrid, which means you'll be here in this room. And this is the first day we've ever had problems like this. It's so weird. But if people can come in person, or they can come through Zoom. And there will also be a recording of the course.
Great.
So I'm going to go back in here, and can I get one of the guys to go shut the door in the room next door? They're playing loud music now. And let me bring the PowerPoint back up. Something interesting about this system, this season, and that was that it does not care to, does not like music, it does not like live music. So Suzanne Sanders had a wonderful class about music, American music, and she had a musician in the class with them, and in the recordings, and the people on Zoom didn't hear any of the music. And so it's because this sound system is canceling out noise, that it's not voices and people. So that was an interesting encounter. They seem to learn something all the time. Okay, now, let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and share a meeting. Ah, good. Now we're back up. You guys can see this, right? Good. All right, so now I'm gonna go back here into this mode and get us to where we left off. All right, the next one is Charlie Yonkers. What is an American? Now, you'll notice that now we're moving from history to a more philosophical look at history. And Charlie will tell you about the thinking he's had in this process.
Correctly, the biographical information there, I'm not a PhD, I'm a lawyer.
Well, I should have known that.
Last September 2021, I went to see Jody and John Miller to talk to them about putting on a course called What is an American? My concept was that this is an abiding question. It's been on the table since the beginning. I took a course in it at Georgetown in graduate school back in 2003. And we started with an essay by Hector de Crevecoeur called What is an American, written in 1782. My program that I proposed to Dodie and John was to take 3 sessions to talk about the birth of the question, if you will, at the beginning of us before we were a nation. And secondly, to then springboard forward to Mark Twain as an example of somebody who called himself, I'm not an American, I am the American. And to explore him as a fulcrum for what is an American. And then the 3rd session would spring to today. That was in September last fall. By this spring, I've done a lot of research and study on the subject and compiled a quite extensive bibliography of current books on the subject. And I decided that a more interesting inquiry would be personal. That is, how have we each individually thought of ourselves ever as an American? When did it start? How did we frame it? What was the perspective that we were thinking from? Where were we geographically, how old we were, and so forth. And then to keep asking those questions amongst us. It's because there's no answer to the question, correct?
No right answer.
There's no right answer, but we can all have answers and definitions, which in all likelihood change over time. It has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with our sense as Americans of what we have experienced as Americans. Have you ever represented the United States, say as a service person or as a diplomat? What was that? Have you ever felt excluded because you were an American, or included because you were an American, etc.? The point would be to have each of us examine interiorly, reflectively, what our personal experience has been about being an American ever, and to share some of those thoughts, because my experience is that in discussing it with anybody, we learn from their own experience. That is, they come at that question individually, based on their books they've read, the places they've grown up, the experiences they have, the perspective that they perhaps were born into, privileged or unprivileged. And so little by little, the fabric, if you will, of an answer, not only to ourselves, but it has to do with our evolving sense of identity as Americans, which is really the story of America, I would submit. the books that I've read just in the last year that have come out on the subject, John Meacham's The Soul of America, David Rubenstein's The American Experiment, which is a series of interviews of people, explore the topic, but the list goes on, and I've been compiling it to my own amazement. And so I think it's, even in the last weeks, I have felt a surge of a sense of being an American, as what has happened in Ukraine has made me feel connected to my parents when World War II must have broken out, how they felt about that, how we are feeling challenged by what we should do, what we could do, what we shouldn't do, etc. But our Americanness has become more prominent in our own thinking, even in the last weeks. So my hope is that in 3 sessions, we could not only look at the objective question of what is an American and how it's been treated since before we were a nation, mind you, to today. And I think it would be informative and illuminating to each of us. Hope to see you.
Thanks, Charlie. I should say that Charlie has a limit on his course for attendance. It's a discussion group more than anything else. And so be sure to sign up early, because I'm sure that it's going to be moving quickly. I don't know if Forrest has signed in yet. I don't see him. But Forrest, along the same lines, Forrest is attacking philosophy too. And he's leaning on the book by John Stuart Mill called On Liberty. So let's hear what he has to say about that.
Last year, I polled attendees to our course on Plato's Symposium and others who might be interested to see which of about a dozen works in philosophy and ancient Greek literature they would like to be offered by the Chesapeake Forum. After a number of preferential votes, they chose John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, a treatise on the fundamental value of individual freedom and the limits on such freedom which a governing body might impose. Little did we realize at that time what a hot topic this could become, how much this would be an issue in our current American culture, to cite only objections to the imposition of anti-COVID-19 vaccinations, voting requirements, as just 2 of many topics of the day about freedom and its constraints. Most of us believe that individual freedom is a fundamental value in our society, with its roots going back to our Declaration of Independence and even beyond that. But we also believe that in a civilized society, this freedom can be legitimately restricted. We are not free to ignore or violate laws. We're not free to harm other people, unless, like surgeons, we intend to reduce their pain in the long run. In some cases, we aren't even free to harm ourselves. But just where should the line be drawn? Even decisions by our Supreme Court are not acceptable to every loyal citizen. In this course, we'll try to understand Mill's thinking on liberty, his values and concerns as representative of ours. This work is often listed among the great projects of Western civilization. Mill is very aware of both the philosophical and practical difficulties in resolving the conflicts that I've mentioned. He proposes a foundation for drawing our guidelines, both in individuals and in governing bodies. So in this course, we'll try to understand his reasoning and test it against our own values, our own presuppositions, And we'll ask, does he present a persuasive case? Is it helpful with respect to figuring out our own stand on these issues? What, if any, concessions should be made to those who question social norms and legal ones? So tough questions indeed. And our struggle to answer these questions requires that each of us become a philosopher ourselves.
Next time we get a laptop, I want one with a touch screen. What you want to do? I'm skipping ahead really quickly because Larry needs to go. And Larry will be teaching this year, right now, he's teaching a class on artificial intelligence. That's been amazing. But now coming into the spring, he'll be talking about the history of cyber warfare yesterday and today. I should also mention that in the fall, Bob has been working with the director of the cyber warfare department at the U.S. Naval Academy to do a presentation for us, which ought to be a good continuation of what Larry puts into the ground for us. Larry?
Thank you. Since 2006, governments, agencies, and government-sponsored programs have launched cyber attacks on various other countries. I found this fascinating and frightening. Attacks have been used to cause widespread blackouts that have lasted for more than several months. Attacks have been used to sabotage nuclear enrichment plants. Attacks have been used to stop banking. Attacks have been used to sabotage shipping. And that particular attack ended up spreading well beyond the desired brunt of the attack, and it affected worldwide shipping and other activities. Mind you, we're talking about attacks that can be done from thousands of miles away. We're talking about attacks that can be anonymous. The advantage of taking the class from me is I'm a civilian and all my material is based on publicly available material. So I can tell you which countries most likely sponsor the attack. You'll be surprised. Yes, Russia for some, but there's been attacks by the United States that I will tell you about that are even more frightening. We're in a digital arms race. Hopefully I'll find some good material about what's happening in the Ukraine. So far, I've read about Ukraine's army of civilians attacking Russia. I haven't heard much about Russia going the other direction. I'm sure it's out there. One little tidbit as you read today's news, remember Ukraine has been attacked for the last 8 to 10 years. They know how to recover. We don't. So we'll talk about our vulnerabilities. We can talk a little bit about the vulnerability of our power grid, which based on a book by Ted Koppel, also quite frightening. So you're 10, there's lots to learn, and I look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Question for you. What about the hackers? Are they doing a good job? Are they getting into Russia?
The current attacks are mostly denial of service, distributed denial of service, so that shuts down entities for a short amount of time. I believe, but I don't know, and I'll be researching this. They're hackering the military and hackering the television stations by shutting things down. It's not the same as hacking and getting in, putting up your own material. That I haven't read much about. Thank you.
So actually, this is a perfect segue to Claudia, who I have to say I'm terribly impressed with, that she agreed to do this course for us about the international economic perspective. this, for those of us who've been in great decisions for the past few years, this is a subject that is really important to talk about. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you'll be talking about, Claudia.
Well, we are going to see what we'll talk about, because one of the challenges of being an international economist, and I've worked in that field for the past 30 some years, of which 25 years at the International Monetary Fund in Washington, DC, visiting many countries and seeing many different types of problems. So, you know, one of the really the big challenges is that every time we open the Financial Times or the business section, we seem to see another huge problem, whether it's the real estate bubble one day, the stock market crash another, cryptocurrencies, oil prices going to the roof, and on and on. And so in the first part of the course, I want to talk a bit about my professional experience on how over the years in architecture or a set of rules and institutions have evolved to handle international economic problems quite successfully. Those go back to the times of John Maynard Keynes and the Great Depression, when economists were not so good at handling some of those huge challenges. But they have evolved tremendously, and we'll be talking about not just the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, but also the role of the Fed, the US Treasury, and the various groups of countries that come together to solve and to address big challenges. And then in the second and third part of the course, I thought we would take selected issues from the International Monetary Fund's World Economic Outlook and discuss more specific examples. So for instance, I can see that we might discuss demographics, international challenges of aging, which affect particularly the Asian countries, but also the United States and Europe. And the second topic we might discuss is the effect of the sanctions on the international economy. But we can also take other topics. This is in June, so for an international economist, that's very far away. And we may be worried about very different problems at that point. And we'll see how we can tackle them in the classroom. I look forward to seeing you there, and I also plan to be there live, hopefully, and have signed up for a hybrid class, so anyone could join from the screen.
Well, thank you very much, Claudia. It's a really amazing subject that you're tackling, and I think a lot of us will learn a lot from you. So, moving on, we have we skipped a class. Some of you have taken classes from Hans Kushneros in the past. In this particular class, he's talking about a subject that is really timely. How does history inform current events?
Hello. This is Hans Kushneros, and I am the moderator of a session I called How Does History Inform Current Events? Well, when I signed up for that, I thought we were going to have kind of a friendly theoretical discussion. Now I realize that basically that patient is dead. The events have overtaken us, and unfortunately, as so often in history, the powers to be, our leaders, be they good or bad, paid little attention to what history had to tell us 85 years ago, and they just letting it repeat. In other words, I think we're at the brink of another world war, the way this is going. Very sad, very tragic, horrific. Given that maybe the environment for our discussion has changed, let me at least invite you to come in and have a discussion anyhow, because I think we owe it to future generations to work on methods by which we can use the wisdom of our experience, collective experience, so that we can improve the future. We cannot let things like this happen again and again and again. Clearly, history tends to be like Goliath. It's like we do a lot of wishful thinking, and that is like being David facing Goliath, and our chances of winning are not large. But we need to continue to keep wishful thinking and become smarter. And hopefully in the future, maybe several generations from now, we will in fact have achieved an environment where history truly can inform current events in a very positive way. What are we going to do here? We're going to do 2 sessions, and they are dialogue sessions, very little seminar type work. I will offer some ideas, but I'm hoping to learn as much from you as I hope you might learn from my insights, that we will bring about an understanding of why history is so fickle, or why it's misunderstood, or why it is not paid attention to, as it has been in this recent incident. And then on the second session, I hope that we can collectively bring about some insights about what it is we need to do, be it in education, be it in electing our leaders, or any number of ways that we can improve the environment in the future, so that history is going to be paid attention to and is going to have a positive impact on the future. So please join me. I hope they're going to be 2 lively and very informative sessions that will bring us some new insights. And that's what I would like to do. I'd like to invite you to join me in this session. Thank you.
We have one more of the scientific type of courses this semester, and it's Bruce Purdy coming back with a course about smart growth and resilient cities.
Hi, my name is Bruce Purdy, and I'm going to be offering a course to the Chesapeake Forum on smart growth and resilient cities. For some reason, I don't know why, I've always been fascinated with cities, even though I didn't grow up in one, and I really didn't spend much time in cities as a young person. It wasn't until I interned at Mayor Lindsay's office in New York City in the 1960s that I really decided that this is going to be a career of mine. And for the last 45 years, I've been working with mayors and deputy mayors and prime ministers on the whole issue of urbanization and how cities can impact the quality of life of its citizens in a more productive way, how economic growth can happen, and how economic degradation can be solved. So, this course will take a look at urbanization, and I think it'll be more interesting because it's going to be about urbanization not only in the US, which I can talk about, but also about urbanization around the world. If you look at urbanization, I mean, we're going into a period where roughly 82% of the world's population live in cities. So I hope this course is fascinating to many people because it's not only going to be looking at resilient cities here in the US, but those abroad. I'm going to also be looking at what's happening in terms of technology. Technology is just rapidly changing the way that municipal officials think about the city, think about urbanization. Large masses amounts of data are being amassed in these urban cores regarding water and transportation and housing and economic development and wastewater and solid waste. And this large amount of data is really transforming. It's transformative. It's the way that people are looking at cities now that never were able to look at it in the past, and it's all because of technology. So I'm going to be looking at the pros and cons of different kinds of urbanization, urban development in the inner core, known as smart growth, or urban development and sprawl. There's pros to each, there's cons to each, and I hope to be looking at both So I hope this course is interesting to people. It's a very different slice of the pie of looking at the way cities operate, not only here in the US, but throughout the world. I look forward to seeing all of you in this later part of the spring, and I hope we have a great discussion. So thanks very much and look forward to it. Take care. Thanks.
Now, Forrest, I noticed that you're with us now.
Yes.
We already ran your video on Liberty, and we also talked about what we were going to be doing this semester with writing reminiscences. But I wondered if you might want to add a couple of words, just a little short vignette of what you're hoping that students will achieve from your course on Liberty.
The one on Liberty, I guess you showed the video.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, only that it's a very current subject. People are speaking about their desire for freedom as opposed to government restrictions. And Mill was the first one to really set this out in some very clear terms. And yet there's always a kind of a fudge factor on where to draw the line. And so we'll be kind of debating a lot, I think, about where to draw that line and what are the arguments for moving the line one way or another.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad you were able to join us. I'm sorry you missed some of the other parts of the program.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're moving on to the fun things. And so, Sal, you have to wake up. And, and we're going to be talking about Sal and bread making, because I want to know, come on up here, Sal. I want to know, why do we want to learn how to make Italian bread from a New Yorker?
Easy.
I need to get him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. My name is Sal Simoncini. I'm with transplant in New York. Everybody knows
We couldn't tell from your
that. You couldn't
accent.
tell from my accent. Right. I've been here since '96. You can't get a loaf of Italian bread. I'll teach you how to make a loaf of Italian bread only using 4 ingredients: water, flour, yeast. What was it? My sous chef.
Good thing Laura's here.
And so, and while we're making this bread, I'm going to show you how to make marinara sauce, which only takes 10 minutes to make. And at the end of the class, we're going to take this bread that we bake, we're going to dip it into the sauce, all right? And you could taste the bread with the sauce, and I'll have a couple bottles of wine there. Keep it friendly. But basically, it's going to be a simple course. It's going to take about an hour and a half. It's on May 25th at 1 o'clock.
That's correct. And it's here.
And it's here.
In the kitchen here at the YMCA. So there is limitations on the number of people we can get into that room. We did the Smith Island cake class last semester and got 15 people in there, and it's a little close, but it was okay. So sign up early. And if you haven't had Sal's Italian bread, you're in for a treat.
Thank you.
So one of our instructors, Suzanne Sanders, is a person who puts a smile on everybody's face. We just love her. She's just a go-getter and bounces around the screen. She's going to be telling us how we can get to know Shakespeare and make it a little easier for those of us who are like, oh well, Shakespeare, oh dear, let me go hide. So here, she's sick today, so let me give you a real quick peek. A peek at her class.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Sanders, and I hope you'll join me for Friending Shakespeare. We all know Shakespeare is supposed to be this great thing with the best plays ever. And maybe you wonder what all the fuss is about. Or maybe you read him in high school and thought it was the worst thing you'd ever done. Well, am here to tell you it doesn't have to be that way. There is a way in, a way to understand Shakespeare that's right for you. You can make friends with him. Yes, you. I'll share techniques I've learned to help you get at the good stuff nice and quick, and it is good. It'll reward your attention many times over. With a bit of a leg up, you'll let go of that old confusion and give way to new appreciation. You'll see he's insightful, sexy, funny, wise. His plays are thrilling and they can touch your heart. We'll cover points like the crazy clothes they wore and how that tells you who's who. We'll talk about the clowns and their not so funny jokes. We'll figure out how to follow the twisted political maneuverings in the history plays. And we'll learn how to insult people Elizabethan style. We'll even learn to make that flowery language understandable. I'll help you tune into his frequency. It is English after all. There's even a special trick I'll teach you for when you start to lose the thread. You'll see. Now, if you decide you want to go see a play, I'll suggest where to go, what to know beforehand, and how to make it rich and clear as possible. If watching from home is better for you, I'll help you pick what version, which play, which book, which movie, all tailored to you. Through most of the past 400 years, Shakespeare has been a popular entertainment, not a treat for the elite. So don't be left out. Let yourself find out why he's the best. That's Friending Shakespeare on Wednesdays, May 11th, 18th, and 25th, 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Zoom. Thanks. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
So as you can see, Suzanne is something else. This year, I know a lot of the instructors say I do a lot of arm twisting, but I never have to twist Joe Petro's arm very much, and he has been a super supporter of Chesapeake Forum. Even this past semester, letting us use his conference room for great decisions. He's just a really good guy, and he really appreciates the business we bring to him. This semester, he's going to be teaching us about tequila. He told Bob, and Bob's going to tell you more about this class. He told Bob the other day, Bob, I think this was Lynn's idea. And it probably was, because when I think of spring and summer, I think of margaritas. Come on, Bob, tell us a little bit more about this.
Suzanne's a tough act to follow. And a lot of us have memories of tequila during our college years when, as Suzanne referenced, dressing in crazy clothes or something like that, or speaking in tongues perhaps. Well, tequila has a lot of variations. I'm taking this class, I'll be the first one to enroll because I don't know much about the 5 different kinds. You can tell from the different colors and tones of them that like the simplest is the clear, and Charlie probably knows more about this than I do, but he lived in Washington, DC for a lot of years. But we're going to learn about the simple and less complex tequilas all the way up to the super reposado or whatever they're called that are aged in like sherry oak barrels. So there's some really fine tequilas that we're going to learn about. They can range in price from about $18 a bottle. And I've read recently, as I put together the syllabus for this class, that some of these bottles range up into $450, $500 for tequilas. So we're going to have a fun time. When we had our whiskey tasting last semester, we stacked and packed the left side of snifters, and we were there for several hours. And Joe paces this so that we have a chance to not only taste and learn about the liquor that we're imbibing in, but also gives us a chance to learn a little bit more about some of our fellow participants in Chesapeake Forum. So look forward to seeing you Friday, the 6th of May.
Thanks, Bob. So that brings us to the end of our program. And believe it or not, we got it done in time. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? I want to just take 1 minute and thank the instructors this year for doing this and standing by me as we changed to a whole new technology. For some of us, it was slicker than snot. And so for some of us, and others of us, it wasn't. But we all learned. I've sat in on every single course. I keep a journal with me. And so every time something goes haywire, I write it down and I figure out how to solve it. And then I make sure I keep a list of that because, you know, like today, things do happen. In the future, I'm pretty much sure that we are always going to have a facilitator in the room with the instructor because it just needs to be me. Instructors have enough to worry about in teaching their class. They don't need to worry about the technology. It gets easier and easier. I can put all the equipment together in about 5 minutes by myself now. But every now and then when we have some tricky thing happen, I have to sort of puzzle over it. So we're getting there. So I want to thank all of you as well, because as participants, you've had to bear with us. And we really appreciate that. By now, I think I told somebody one day that my first priority was the classroom. The second priority was to make sure that the people on Zoom had a good experience. And that's when we came up with the idea of putting the instructor on a separate Zoom so that they would be a thumbnail on the screen. And then the last priority is to make sure those recordings are up to our standards. And I have to say, Sally Moore, our audiovisual person, has been doing a fantastic job, especially these last few weeks where we've started recording in all 4 methods so that she can pick and choose and make sure that the screen is big enough and the pictures are big enough. So hopefully you'll see some of those. Always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. You can always reach me at info@chesapeakeforum.org. And I have just one last question so that I can give feedback to Aurora Vines and Vibes for providing us with food tonight. What was your favorite thing on the table tonight?
Oh, everything.
Everything.
Oh, yeah, like a little skewered tomato and.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, those are easy to eat, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, I see that the apples, the wrapped apples have been a little harder to eat and they didn't go quite as fast, but, and there's plenty of food. We can stay here as long as you want, so feel free to socialize and enjoy yourselves. John, you had a comment?
Yes, as the beneficiary of Lynn's patience with this instructor and many other instructors, I want to thank you because it was wonderful coming into this room, knowing that this technology I knew nothing about, but I am learning about it rapidly. But to have Lynn just to my right, operating the machine so I could teach and really focus on my job, which was to be relaxed enough to present the topic. Lynn, thank you for all of that.
Oh, you're quite welcome. When it gets right down to it, it's about all of us. And just, you know, one of the things that drew me to the Eastern Shore was knowing that we had an Academy for Lifelong Learning here and that it was an active one. I can't say enough about how much I believe this is important to all of us, not just to seniors, but also to people who work so that we make the recordings available, and to people who are trying to raise their children to appreciate learning. So I hope that when you leave here tonight, you'll tackle a couple of your neighbors, tell them about Chesapeake Forum, tell them how easy it is to sign up and get the newsletter to find out what's going on. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the